What would you do if you discovered that the confession to a century-old murder wasn't the end of the horror, but merely the beginning? Have you ever wondered what secrets lie dormant in the walls of historic New England homes, waiting for the right moment or the right person to awaken them? In the bitter winter of 1907, as snow blanketed the jagged coastline of northern Maine, the quiet town of Blackwater Harbor found itself at the center of a mystery that would haunt its residents for generations. Local historical records from the Penobscot County Archives reveal that on January 12th of that year, the temperature had plunged to 27 degrees below zero, the coldest night recorded since 1868. It was on this night that the prestigious Caldwell Mansion, perched atop Widow's Bluff overlooking the turbulent Atlantic, became the site of what many would later call the most disturbing crime in Maine's history. The Caldwell family had been fixtures of Blackwater Harbor since its founding in the early 18th century. Their fortune, built initially on shipbuilding and later diversified into lumber and textiles, had made them not only the wealthiest family in the county, but also its most influential. The mansion itself, an imposing Victorian structure with 3 floors, 17 bedrooms, and a distinctive octagonal tower, had been completed in 1873, a testament to the family's prominence and a landmark visible from nearly every point in town. On that fateful January night, neighbors reported hearing unusual sounds coming from the mansion, not screams or commotion, as one might expect from a scene of violence, but what witnesses described as a low, persistent humming, like the drone of countless insects and the rhythmic tapping of metal on wood, as if someone were sending an endless telegram. These accounts, documented in the official police report filed by Sheriff William Harding, were initially dismissed as the effects of wind whistling through the mansion's numerous chimneys and dormers. "I've lived next to the Caldwells for 37 years, stated Martha Pearson, the elderly widow whose cottage stood nearest to the property, in her sworn testimony. "Never heard anything like it before. Wasn't natural, that sound. Made my skin crawl something fierce. And my dog, poor thing, wouldn't stop howling. Kept staring at that house like he could see something I couldn't." When no one from the household appeared in town for 3 consecutive days, unusual for a family known for their punctuality and active involvement in community affairs, Sheriff Harding reluctantly organized a wellness check. What his deputies discovered upon entering the mansion on the morning of January 15th would become the subject of whispered conversations and newspaper headlines across the nation. The official report, portions of which were sealed by court order until 1978, described the scene in clinical, detached language that nonetheless conveyed the horror that greeted the lawman. All 7 occupants of the residence, Thaddeus Caldwell, aged 62, his wife Eleanor, aged 58, their 3 children, James, aged 31, Catherine, aged 29, and William, aged 26, and 2 domestic staff members, Margaret Sullivan, aged 46, and Charles Wu, aged 39, were discovered in the main drawing room, seated in an arrangement described by Deputy Foster as ritualistic, around a table laden with an uneaten dinner. Each victim exhibited a single puncture wound at the base of the skull, approximately 1/8 inch in diameter, penetrating to an estimated depth of 3 to 4 inches. No signs of struggle were observed. The drawing room doors were locked from the inside, with the key still in the lock. The case dominated the front pages of newspapers, from the Blackwater Harbor Gazette to the New York Times. The latter ran with the headline, "Entire Family, Slain in Locked Room Mystery," on January 18th, followed by increasingly sensational coverage as details emerged. What captured the public's imagination was not merely the gruesome nature of the killings, but the seemingly impossible circumstances surrounding them. How could 7 people be murdered in a locked room with no sign of the perpetrator? How could a killer inflict identical wounds with such precision? And perhaps most puzzlingly, why had the victims apparently made no attempt to flee or defend themselves? The investigation quickly stalled. No murder weapon was ever found. No footprints were discovered in the snow surrounding the house. The only unusual physical evidence, aside from the bodies themselves, was a collection of small metal objects arranged in a precise circle on the floor of the attic, described in evidence logs as 7 iron nails of antique manufacture, heavily oxidized, arranged in a perfect circle approximately 18 inches in diameter. The significance of this arrangement was never determined, and the items themselves subsequently disappeared from the evidence room at the Blackwater Harbour Sheriff's Office in 1908. "I've been in law enforcement for 28 years, Sheriff Harding told the Bangor Daily News in a rare interview. "Seen all manner of cruelty that men can inflict on one another. But this wasn't the work of any man I'd care to meet. Some things perhaps are best left uninvestigated." The case grew colder as winter gave way to spring. By summer, it had been relegated to occasional newspaper columns speculating on the Caldwell curse or the phantom killer of Widow's Bluff. The mansion stood empty, its contents undisturbed by order of the state attorney's office, though no additional investigation took place. Distant relatives of the Caldwells residing in Boston showed no interest in claiming the property. The town council debated what to do with the increasingly derelict structure, but no consensus was reached. And so it remained, a looming reminder of tragedy, slowly being reclaimed by Maine's harsh weather and persistent vegetation. For 27 years, the Caldwell murders remained unsolved, the mansion uninhabited. Then, in the autumn of 1934, a development occurred that would reignite interest in the case and add another layer to its growing mythology. The Depression had hit Blackwater Harbour hard. Once thriving fishing and canning operations had shuttered, leaving much of the population unemployed. Property values plummeted. It was in this economic climate that a newcomer arrived in town. Dr. Ambrose Sullivan, a professor of psychology from Miskatonic University in Arkham, Massachusetts. Sullivan, a tall, gaunt man with a shock of prematurely white hair and intensely focused eyes, purchased the Caldwell mansion for a fraction of its pre-Depression value, announcing his intention to establish a retreat for the study of the human mind. The townspeople were understandably wary. No one had set foot in the mansion for decades, except for occasional vandals and thrill-seeking teenagers, all of whom reported strange experiences, cold spots, whispered voices, and in one particularly disturbing account, the sensation of fingers pressing gently at the base of the skull. But Sullivan was undeterred. He hired local laborers for the renovation, paying above-market wages that few could afford to refuse, despite their misgivings about the property. Renovations progressed rapidly through the winter of 1934 and into 1935. Sullivan proved to be a reclusive figure, rarely venturing into town except to purchase supplies or mail thick envelopes to colleagues at various universities. Workers reported that he spent most nights in the mansion's tower room, where lights could be seen burning until dawn. Some claimed to hear the sound of drilling coming from within, though Sullivan explained this as part of his installation of modern electrical wiring. By March of 1935, the renovations were complete, and Sullivan began receiving visitors, colleagues from academic institutions across New England and beyond, arriving by train and automobile for what he described as symposia on the frontiers of psychological research. These gatherings typically lasted several days, during which unusual sounds were reported by neighbors, chanting, mechanical humming, and on at least 3 occasions, what witnesses described as screaming, not like a person in pain, but like someone who's seen something they shouldn't. Sullivan's activities might have continued indefinitely, had it not been for the arrival of a young reporter from the Boston Globe named Edward Chambers. Chambers had developed an interest in unsolved historical crimes and had been researching the Caldwell case as part of a series on New England's forgotten mysteries. Learning of Sullivan's occupation of the mansion, he traveled to Blackwater Harbour in April of 1935 to request an interview. What happened during that interview has been pieced together from Chambers' notes recovered after subsequent events. Sullivan apparently received the reporter cordially, giving him a tour of the renovated mansion and speaking at length about his theories of psychology, which Chambers described as unorthodox, to the point of heresy. Sullivan spoke of the mind as merely a receiver for consciousness that exists independent of the brain, and described his experiments as attempts to tune this receiver to different frequencies. The most disturbing portion of Chambers' notes concerns what Sullivan showed him in the attic, ACE circular room that had been part of the mansion's tower. There Sullivan had installed what he called his resonance chamber, a contraption consisting of 7 metal chairs arranged in a circle, each equipped with what appeared to be medical devices, including electrodes, and a narrow metal probe that could be positioned at the base of a seated person's skull. When I asked what purpose this apparatus served, Chambers wrote, Dr. Sullivan smiled in a way that made me profoundly uncomfortable. "It allows us to hear them," he said. "Those who have been trying to speak to us for so long." When I inquired who they were, he merely laughed and suggested we continue the tour. I noted that the floor beneath the circle of chairs had been replaced with some sort of metal plate, inscribed with symbols I did not recognize, though they appeared similar to astronomical notations. Chambers left the mansion that evening with plans to return the following day to complete his interview. He spent the night at Blackwater Harbor's only hotel, where he placed several long-distance telephone calls, one to his editor in Boston, and another, curiously, to the Department of Psychology at Miskatonic University. The content of these calls remains unknown, but the hotel operator later reported that Chambers appeared agitated after the second call and requested information about the next train out of town. He never had the chance to leave. Shortly after midnight, witnesses reported seeing Chambers walking toward the Caldwell mansion, despite having expressed to the hotel clerk his intention to depart first thing in the morning. He was observed by at least 3 townspeople, all of whom described his gait as stiff and mechanical, with one witness noting that his eyes were open, but he didn't seem to be seeing anything. What occurred next represents the most significant development in the Caldwell case since the original murders. At approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, on April 17, 1935, residents of Blackwater Harbor were awakened by what multiple witnesses described as a column of blue light emanating from the tower of the Caldwell mansion, accompanied by a sound like the ocean rushing backward. Several people reported hearing a single, unified scream that seemed to come from multiple throats simultaneously. The local constable, Frank Webster, along with 3 deputies, responded to the scene. Upon finding the mansion's doors locked, they forced entry. What they discovered would become the subject of a federal investigation and would eventually be partially redacted from official records by order of the U.S. Department of Justice. According to the portions of the police report that remain public, Sullivan was found in the attic room, seated in one of the 7 metal chairs, dead from what appeared to be the same type of wound that had killed the Caldwell family, a narrow puncture at the base of the skull. The other 6 chairs were occupied as well, each by a corpse in an advanced state of decomposition, dressed in clothing consistent with the fashion of 1907. The preliminary conclusion of the investigating officers, as stated in the Blackwater Harbor Police blotter dated April 18, 1935, was that Dr. Sullivan appears to have exhumed the bodies of the Caldwell family and placed them in his apparatus for purposes unknown. This conclusion, however, was contradicted by cemetery records and subsequent forensic examination, which confirmed that the bodies of the Caldwell family remained undisturbed in their graves at Blackwater Harbor Cemetery. The identity of the decomposed corpses was never officially established. Most disturbing of all was the discovery of Edward Chambers, found wandering along the shoreline below Widow's Bluff at dawn, his clothes soaked with seawater despite no evidence he had entered the water. When questioned by police, he appeared unable to speak, except to repeat a single phrase, "The door is open now." "They're coming through." Chambers was committed to the State Psychiatric Hospital in Augusta, where he remained until his death in 1972, having never regained his full faculties or provided any coherent account of what transpired in the mansion. His personal effects, sealed by court order until 50 years after his death, included a journal with a single entry dated April 16, 1935. Sullivan isn't who he claims to be. Miskatonic has no record of him. The man I met today has the same eyes as the figure in the photograph of Theodore Caldwell I found in the Boston Library archives. They are the same person, but that's impossible. I'm going back tonight to confront him. God help me, I have to know the truth. The Caldwell mansion was destroyed by fire in 1936, a fire that, according to insurance investigators, appeared to have started simultaneously in 7 different locations throughout the house. The property remained abandoned, regarded by locals as cursed ground. Nature gradually reclaimed the ruins, and the events of 1907 and 1935 faded into local legend. The case might have remained nothing more than a footnote in the annals of unsolved American crimes had it not been for the discovery made in 2007, exactly 100 years after the original murders, when construction workers breaking ground for a coastal resort hotel unearthed a metal box in the soil where the Caldwell mansion had once stood. The contents of the box included a manuscript written in what forensic analysts determined to be 7 different hands, alternating between passages as if the authors had taken turns writing. The manuscript, which has since become known as the Caldwell Confession, purports to be a first-hand account of what actually occurred in the mansion on January 12, 1907. The document begins with a passage attributed to Thaddeus Caldwell himself. By the time anyone reads these words, the deed will have been done, and we will have crossed the threshold. What we have discovered beneath this house, beneath this entire town, cannot be undone or forgotten. The patterns in the ancient rock, the hieroglyphs that no human language can account for, the tunnels that descend far deeper than any natural formation should allow. These are merely symptoms of a greater truth that we have been privileged or perhaps cursed to glimpse. Tonight we complete the circuit. Tonight we become the conduit. May God forgive us for what we are about to allow into this world. Subsequent passages describe the Caldwell family's discovery, during renovations to the mansion in 1906, of what appeared to be a prehistoric chamber beneath the house's foundation. This chamber, according to the manuscript, contained artifacts of non-human manufacture, and walls covered in inscriptions that Thaddeus Caldwell, an amateur linguist, spent months attempting to decipher. The final passage of the manuscript, written in a hand identified by experts as matching the known handwriting of Eleanor Caldwell, contains the most disturbing claim of all. The entities that exist in the space between spaces require a very specific arrangement of minds to manifest. 7 consciousnesses, positioned at precise coordinates, creating a pattern that serves as both key and door. We offer ourselves willingly as that key. Ambrose has agreed to serve as the anchor, to remain behind, suspended between states, neither fully here nor fully there. He will find others, a century hence, to complete the second circuit. And then the gate will be open permanently. The great work continues. The authenticity of the manuscript remains a subject of intense debate among historians and crime researchers. Some dismiss it as an elaborate hoax, perhaps perpetrated by someone with knowledge of the original case, seeking to capitalize on its centennial. Others point to the difficulty of forging 7 distinct early 20th century handwriting styles, as well as the manuscript's reference to details of the case that were not publicly known until the release of sealed records in the 1970s. Most puzzling of all is the manuscript's mention of someone named Ambrose, a name that appears nowhere in the original case files, but which matches the first name adopted by the mysterious Dr. Sullivan who occupied the mansion in 1935. In the years following the manuscript's discovery, residents of Blackwater Harbor have reported an increasing frequency of unusual phenomena: electronic devices malfunctioning in specific patterns, unexplained lights in the night sky above the former site of the mansion, and perhaps most unsettling, a sharp increase in the number of missing persons cases in the surrounding Penobscot County. Local law enforcement has dismissed any connection between these incidents and the historical case, attributing them variously to heightened awareness following the manuscript's publicity, increased tourism to the area by paranormal enthusiasts, and in the case of the disappearances, the nationwide opioid epidemic that has hit rural Maine particularly hard. Yet some longtime residents of Blackwater Harbor tell a different story. They speak of dreams shared by multiple unconnected people, dreams of standing in a circle of 7, feeling a gentle pressure at the base of the skull, and hearing a voice that seems to emanate from everywhere and nowhere, whispering, "The first circuit is complete. The second circuit nears completion. Soon comes the third, and then we shall all be as one." Martha Hollis, whose family has lived in Blackwater Harbor for 5 generations, provided this account to researchers from the New England Journal of Paranormal Studies in 2018. "My grandmother was just a child when the Caldwell business happened, but she remembered it clear as day until she died. She told me something that's never been in any of the newspaper articles or books about it. She said that on the night it happened, the original night back in 1907, every clock in town stopped at exactly the same moment, 3:33 in the morning. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night. Last Tuesday it happened again. Every digital clock, every phone, every computer in Blackwater Harbour reset itself to 3:33. Some people are saying it was some kind of power surge, but I know better. It's starting again. Have you ever felt that unmistakable sensation of being watched when you're completely alone? Or perhaps you've experienced that moment when you enter a room and feel that someone or something has just left it moments before your arrival. The residents of Blackwater Harbour have been living with these sensations for over a century now. The discovery of the Caldwell Confession in 2007 sent ripples through the academic community far beyond the borders of Maine. Dr. Rebecca Chen, professor of anthropology at Miskatonic University and leading expert on New England's pre-colonial history, was among the first scholars granted access to the manuscript. Her initial findings, published in the Journal of American Folklore, challenged conventional interpretations of the document. What's particularly intriguing about the Caldwell Confession isn't just its content, but its structure, Dr. Chen wrote. The alternating authorship creates a pattern that itself seems designed to convey meaning. The manuscript doesn't just tell a story, it's constructed as a form of ritual documentation. The 7 distinct handwriting styles alternate in a specific sequence that repeats exactly 7 times throughout the text. This level of deliberate patterning suggests something far more complex than a simple confession or hoax. Dr. Chen's analysis identified another disturbing aspect of the manuscript that had been overlooked in earlier examinations: microscopic perforations in the paper that corresponded to specific words throughout the text. When these perforated words were extracted and arranged in the order of their appearance, they formed a separate message. The pattern must be maintained. 7 points, 7 minds, 7 doors. The key turns not in space but in thought. We are the first, others will follow. The seal weakens with each cycle. Once the third 7 turns the key, the way remains open permanently. In the summer of 2008, Dr. Chen assembled a team of researchers to conduct the first archaeological survey of the former Caldwell property since the 1950s. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetometer surveys revealed what appeared to be an underground chamber, approximately 40 feet beneath where the mansion's foundation had once stood. County records indicated no knowledge of such a structure, and geological surveys suggested that the chamber did not match natural cave formations known to exist in coastal Maine. Attempts to secure permits for excavation became mired in bureaucratic complications. Local officials cited environmental concerns related to the property's proximity to protected coastal wetlands. State authorities referenced potential historical preservation issues. Perhaps most unusually, the Federal Department of Energy unexpectedly declared an interest in the site, stating in a brief filed with the Maine Land Use Planning Commission that the area was under consideration for future infrastructure development related to national security. As legal battles over access to the site dragged on, strange occurrences in Blackwater Harbour continued to escalate. During a town hall meeting in December of 2008, called to address residents' concerns about the increasing frequency of power outages, local electrical engineer Samuel Weston presented findings that would add yet another layer to the growing mystery. These aren't normal outages, Weston informed the gathered townspeople, as recorded in the meeting minutes preserved in the Blackwater Harbour Municipal Archives. Normal outages affect random sections of the grid based on equipment failures or external damage. What we're seeing here follows a pattern. Each outage affects a specific sector of town, and they're occurring in a sequence that, when mapped, creates a 7-pointed star centered on the old Caldwell property. Even more concerning is that each affected sector experiences the outage for exactly 33 minutes. The town council dismissed Weston's concerns as pattern-seeking in random events, but privately commissioned a review of the town's electrical infrastructure. The resulting report, completed by consulting firm Northeast Utilities Assessment in February 2009, has never been made public in its entirety, though portions leaked to the Bangor Daily News confirmed Weston's observations about the pattern and duration of the outages. The most disturbing development came in April of 2009, when 7 Blackwater Harbour residents disappeared over the course of a single week. The disappearances shared several unusual characteristics. All occurred between midnight and 4 in the morning. None showed signs of forced entry or struggle, and all 7 individuals had reported experiencing the same dream in the nights leading up to their disappearances. A dream of standing in a circle in a stone chamber, feeling a sharp pain at the base of their skulls. FBI Special Agent Diana Mercer, who led the task force investigating the disappearances, initially focused on the possibility of a serial kidnapper inspired by the historical Caldwell case. This theory was undermined, however, by the victims' diversity. They ranged in age from 17 to 73, included both men and women, and had no apparent connections to each other beyond residing in Blackwater Harbour. The pattern defies conventional victimology, Agent Mercer noted in a field report dated May 7, 2009. In my 17 years with the Bureau, I've never encountered a case where the victims have so little in common. The only unifying factor appears to be these reported dreams, which I'm hesitant to give credence to as they may represent a case of suggestion and community hysteria following the publicity. Around the Caldwell manuscript, the investigation took an unexpected turn on May 21st, when all 7 missing persons reappeared simultaneously. According to police reports, at precisely 3:33 in the morning, each returned to their respective homes with no memory of where they had been for the previous month. Medical examinations revealed only one commonality. Each had a small, perfectly circular scar at the base of their skull, approximately 1/8 of an inch in diameter. Neurological assessments conducted at Eastern Maine Medical Center in High Bangor showed unusual activity in the temporal lobes of all 7 individuals, activity that neurologist Dr. James Harrison described as consistent with what we might expect to see in patients experiencing complex auditory hallucinations, except that the patterns across all 7 subjects are identical down to the millisecond, which should be neurologically impossible. The 7 returned residents were kept under observation for 2 weeks before being released back to their families. In the months that followed, they reported no unusual symptoms or memories, though several community members noted subtle behavioral changes, increased insularity, a tendency to gather together despite having had no previous social connections, and most notably, a shared habit of humming the same unidentifiable melody. Federal investigators, finding no evidence of criminal activity and faced with victims who denied any wrongdoing against them, officially closed the case in August 2009. Agent Mercer, however, remained unofficially involved, taking vacation time to continue her investigation independently. Her personal notes, shared with this researcher on condition of anonymity, reveal mounting frustration with the Bureau's unwillingness to consider what she termed the historical pattern repeating itself. The parallels to 1935 are too precise to be coincidental, Mercer wrote in her private journal. 7 disappearances, 7 returns, 7 marks. Even the timing, April, the same month Sullivan conducted his experiment with Chambers. Something cyclical is occurring in Blackwater Harbour, operating on intervals of approximately 35 years, which raises the question, what happened in the 1970s that we've missed? Mercer's question led her to the State Archives in Augusta, where she spent weeks reviewing records related to Blackwater Harbour from 1968 through 1975. What she discovered has never been officially acknowledged by any government agency, but was detailed in a manuscript she mailed to selected journalists and researchers shortly before her own disappearance in November 2009. According to documents Mercer uncovered, in April of 1970, 7 patients at the Blackwater Harbour Convalescent Home experienced identical symptoms over the course of a single night, seizures followed by catatonia, with each developing a small unexplained puncture wound at the base of the skull. All 7 patients died within minutes of each other, despite being in different rooms of the facility. The incident was investigated by the Maine Department of Health and Human Services, which attributed the deaths to equipment malfunction resulting in air embolism during routine medical procedures. Mercer's research revealed several troubling inconsistencies in this explanation. First, medical records indicated no procedures had been scheduled for any of the 7 patients that night. Second, the attending physician, Dr. Victor Sanderson, had no previous or subsequent association with the convalescent home and appeared to have been granted temporary privileges specifically for that night. Most significantly, Mercer discovered that Dr. Sanderson's medical credentials could not be verified by any licensing board or medical school in the United States. The most disturbing find in Mercer's investigation was a photograph taken at the convalescent home the day before the incident. The image, part of a feature in the Blackwater Harbor Gazette about renovations to the facility, shows a tall, thin man with white hair in the background observing the photographer. Though his face is partially obscured, facial recognition software employed by Mercer identified a 96% match with photographs of Dr. Ambrose Sullivan from 1935. Agent Mercer's last known communication was an email sent to her former partner at the Bureau, Agent Thomas Kelly, on November 12, 2009. Tom, I'm heading to Blackwater Harbor tonight. I've identified a pattern in the historical record that suggests whatever happened in 1907, 1935, and 1970 is building towards something larger. The intervals between events are decreasing. 28 years between the first and second, 35 years between the second and third, and now just 39 years between the third and fourth. I believe we're witnessing some kind of accelerating cycle. I've also found references in Sullivan's personal papers to something called the Third Circuit. The first seems to have been the original Caldwell family. The second was whatever Sullivan did with Chambers and those corpses in 1935. The 1970 event at the convalescent home appears to be the third, which means the 2009 disappearances and returns represent the beginning of a Fourth Circuit, something that wasn't supposed to happen according to the original plan. I'm convinced the 7 who returned are not the same people who disappeared. Something else came back wearing their faces. I'm going to confront them tonight at the old Caldwell property. I've sent copies of all my research to you and 3 others as insurance. If you don't hear from me by tomorrow noon, assume the worst. Agent Mercer's vehicle was found abandoned near the former site of the Caldwell mansion on November 13th. Despite an extensive search involving federal agents, state police, and local volunteers, no trace of her has ever been found. The FBI officially lists her status as missing, presumed deceased, attributing her disappearance to possible mental health crisis leading to misadventure in hazardous coastal terrain. The 7 returned. Residents continued their quiet lives in Blackwater Harbor, occasionally gathering at one of their homes for what neighbors described as quiet meetings where you could hear them all humming that same strange tune. By all accounts, they were model citizens, unfailingly polite, conscientious about community obligations, and notably private. The next significant development occurred in June of 2010, when construction finally began on the long-delayed resort hotel on the former Caldwell property. The project, funded by Oceanic Vistas LLC, a Delaware corporation with no clear ownership records, had somehow navigated the regulatory obstacles that had previously prevented archaeological investigation of the site. Documents filed with the Penobscot County Planning Department revealed that the hotel's design featured several unusual elements, a foundation significantly deeper than structural requirements would dictate, a central atrium positioned directly above where ground-penetrating radar had indicated the presence of the underground chamber, and most notably, 7 specialized guest suites arranged in a precise circular pattern on the top floor. Construction proceeded at an unusually rapid pace, with crews working around the clock, despite complaints from nearby residents about nocturnal noise violations. Workers reported strange experiences, tools disappearing and reappearing in different locations, unexplained cold spots even during summer heat waves, and most commonly, the sensation of being watched by unseen observers. Raymond Peterson, a bulldozer operator who resigned from the project after just 3 weeks, gave this account to the Blackwater Harbor Gazette. I've been in construction 32 years, worked every kind of site you can imagine, and never felt anything like what's happening on that bluff. It's like the ground itself doesn't want to be disturbed. My machine would stall for no reason exactly the same spot every time, right where they're putting that central foundation. The engineers kept saying it was mechanical problems, but I know my equipment. Something down there didn't want us digging. Despite such concerns, construction continued unabated. By September 2010, the structure's exterior was largely complete, an imposing 7-story building of glass and steel that dominated the coastline. Local opinion was sharply divided, with many residents welcoming the economic opportunities the resort would bring, while others expressed concern about its environmental impact and the rapid change to the town's character. It was during the final phase of interior work in November 2010 that the most inexplicable incident occurred. According to reports filed with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, at 3:33 in the morning on November 12th, all 7 members of the overnight construction crew were found unconscious in the hotel's central atrium. Medical responders reported that each worker was discovered in a seated position, arranged in a perfect circle, with each experiencing identical symptoms: dilated pupils, lowered body temperature, and a small puncture wound at the base of the skull. All 7 workers survived, but awakened with no memory of what had transpired. The incident was officially attributed to carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heating system, though toxicology reports showed no evidence of such exposure. The construction company, Black Timber Enterprises, paid a modest fine for safety violations and resumed work within a week, with the project reaching completion by the end of December. The Widow's Bluff Resort and Spa officially opened on January 12, 2011, exactly 104 years to the day after the original Caldwell murders. The opening gala, attended by state officials, business leaders, and selected members of the national press, was widely regarded as a success, though several attendees later remarked on the unusual behavior of the hotel's management team. 7 individuals who moved throughout the event with synchronized precision and spoke in what one guest described as identical cadences, as if they were all reading from the same internal script. Operations at the resort proceeded normally for the first several months. Tourism to Blackwater Harbor increased substantially, bringing welcome revenue to local businesses. Reviews highlighted the resort's stunning ocean views, exceptional service, and unique architectural features, particularly the central atrium with its elaborate floor mosaic depicting what promotional materials described as ancient, astronomical alignments. It was a guest at the resort, Professor Michael Townsend of Columbia University's Department of Comparative Religion, who first publicly identified the true nature of the atrium design. In a post on his academic blog in May of 2011, Townsend wrote, "What struck me immediately upon entering the atrium wasn't just its beauty, but its familiarity. The pattern inlaid in the floor isn't astronomical at all. It's a precise reproduction of the 7-pointed ritual circle described in the Liber Ceremonia Prohibitum, a 17th-century grimoire purportedly translated from much older sources. The text describes it as a doorway configuration, designed to thin the membrane between spheres of existence. Most concerning is the placement of 7 brass markers around the circle's perimeter, positioned exactly where participants in the ritual would stand." Townsend's post attracted little attention outside academic circles, and resort management dismissed his observations as creative interpretation of a purely decorative element. Public interest in the connection was similarly minimal, as by this time the Caldwell case had once again receded from national consciousness, remembered primarily by true crime enthusiasts and local historians. This changed dramatically in December of 2011, when an article appeared in the alternative news website Dark Corners, titled "The Blackwater Pattern, A Century-Long Plan Nears Completion." The piece, written by independent journalist Eliza Warner, connected elements that had previously been examined only in isolation: the original Caldwell murders, the Sullivan incident, the convalescent home deaths, the 2009 disappearances and returns, and the construction of the resort. Warner's investigation went further than previous researchers by identifying a common element across all 5 events: the presence of an individual matching Ambrose Sullivan's description, captured in photographs or mentioned in witness statements at each interval. Most significantly, she included a photograph taken at the resort's opening gala, showing a tall, thin, white-haired man standing at the edge of the atrium, observing the proceedings with what she described as the patient satisfaction of someone watching a long-gestating plan come to fruition, if we accept the possibility that this is indeed the same individual. Across more than a century of Blackwater Harbor's history, Warner wrote, we must also consider the implications of the circuits mentioned in both the Caldwell Confession and Agent Mercer's notes. The pattern suggests that whatever began in 1907 has been building methodically toward a culmination, one that may be centered on the resort, constructed atop the very ground where the Caldwell mansion once stood. Warner's article might have remained in the realm of internet conspiracy theories had it not been for the events of January 12, 2012, the 105th anniversary of the original murders, and exactly 1 year after the resort's opening. At precisely 3:33 in the morning, every electronic device in Blackwater Harbor, cell phones, computers, televisions, even digital watches, displayed the same message for exactly 33 seconds before returning to normal function. The Fourth Circuit is complete. The Fifth Circuit commences. The door stands ready. Officials from the resort and local utility companies attributed the incident to a sophisticated hacking attack. Those cybersecurity experts consulted by state authorities could identify no known method by which such a diverse array of unconnected devices could be simultaneously compromised. The FBI opened an investigation, but found no evidence of who might have perpetrated such an elaborate hoax. In the months that followed, residents of Blackwater Harbor reported an increasing frequency of unusual phenomena. Electronic devices activating without human input, pets exhibiting extreme distress for no apparent reason, and most commonly, dreams of standing in the resort's atrium, feeling drawn towards 7 specific points around the mosaic circle. Most disturbing were reports from resort guests who had stayed in the 7 special suites on the top floor. Many described waking in the night to find themselves sleepwalking toward the elevator, with no memory of having left their beds. Others reported hearing a persistent humming that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Several guests checked out early, citing intense headaches centered at the base of the skull. By the summer of 2012, these incidents had begun to affect the resort's reputation. Occupancy rates declined. Management responded by offering steep discounts, particularly for the 7 special suites, which by August were consistently occupied despite, or perhaps because of, their growing notoriety. It was during this period that Dr. Rebecca Chen, whose earlier research on the Caldwell Confession had helped bring scholarly attention to the case, returned to Blackwater Harbor. Having secured a grant from the Peabody Foundation for Anthropological Research, she took residence in the town with the stated purpose of conducting oral history interviews with longtime residents about the region's folklore. Her actual activities, as revealed in her private correspondence with colleagues at Miskatonic University, focused primarily on monitoring the resort and its guests, particularly those staying in the 7 special suites. In an email dated September 3, 2012, she wrote, "I've confirmed that the resort's management has been deliberately selecting guests for the special suites based on criteria that align disturbingly well with the receiver characteristics described in the Sullivan Papers. Each current occupant fits the profile. Individuals with reported histories of heightened intuition, experience with lucid dreaming, or professional backgrounds in fields requiring deep pattern recognition. Most concerning is that all 7 current occupants report having experienced the same dream prior to their arrival, standing in a circle in a stone chamber, though none mentioned this during the reservation process. The implication is that they were somehow drawn here." Chen's investigations continued through the fall, during which she documented increasing synchronicities among the guests in the special suites. Despite having no prior connection to each other, they began to exhibit coordinated behaviors, gathering in the atrium at specific times without apparent communication, ordering identical meals in the resort restaurant, and, according to staff members Chen interviewed, humming the same unidentifiable melody that had been associated with the 7 returned residents from 2009. On December 21st, the winter solstice, Chen noted a significant escalation in activity. All 7 guests in the special suites reported experiencing intense headaches throughout the day. Resort staff observed them gathering in the atrium at sunrise, midday, and sunset, standing at precise positions around the mosaic circle. Electronic systems throughout the building experienced unexplained malfunctions, with security cameras in the atrium displaying only static between 3 and 4 in the morning. Chen's final email, sent to her department chair at 3:15 in the morning on December 22nd, contained only a brief message. "It's happening tonight. Sullivan is here, I've seen him. The pattern isn't what we thought. It's not 7 cycles, it's 7 points in each of 7 cycles, creating a structure in time rather than space. I'm going to the atrium to try to disrupt whatever they're attempting. If you don't hear from me by morning, contact the authorities. Tell them to focus on the chamber beneath the foundation. That's where the doorway is." Security camera footage from the resort, obtained by authorities during the subsequent investigation, shows Chen entering the atrium at 3:27 in the morning. The 7 guests from the special suites are already present, standing at positions around the mosaic circle. At 3:30, a tall figure matching Sullivan's description enters from a service corridor. The camera experiences interference for exactly 33 seconds, after which the atrium appears empty. All 8 individuals, Chen and the 7 guests, had vanished. The disappearances prompted a full-scale investigation involving local police, state authorities, and federal agents. The resort was temporarily closed, and an extensive search of the premises was conducted. No trace of the missing persons was found, though cadaver dogs reportedly exhibited unusual behavior when brought into the atrium, alternating between apparent distress and what handlers described as entranced stillness. Ground-penetrating radar was once again employed to examine the area beneath the foundation, revealing that the previously identified chamber now appeared significantly larger than in earlier surveys. Attempts to access this space through the foundation were hampered by what engineers described as anomalous material properties in the concrete, which resisted all conventional drilling equipment. The investigation remained active for several months before being gradually scaled back as leads were exhausted. The resort reopened in June 2013, though the special suites were permanently decommissioned and converted to storage space. The atrium's mosaic was removed and replaced with conventional marble flooring. Management changed hands, with the property being acquired by a national hotel chain that rebranded it and made no reference to its controversial history in marketing materials. Public interest in the case waned, and Blackwater Harbor enjoyed several years of relative normalcy. Tourism recovered, and many residents expressed relief at returning to what one town council member called blessed uneventfulness. The events associated with the Caldwell case once again receded into local legend, discussed occasionally by longtime residents, but largely forgotten by the wider world. This period of calm was shattered in January of 2018, when construction workers renovating a section of the Blackwater Harbor Public Library discovered a hidden compartment behind a bookshelf in the historical archives. The compartment contained a metal box identical to the one found at the Caldwell property in 2007, though this one bore an inscription etched into its lid, "To be opened January 12, 2019. Despite pressure from various parties, including representatives from federal agencies, academic researchers, and private collectors offering substantial sums, the town council voted to honor the inscription and keep the box sealed until the specified date. It was placed in a secure display in the library's main hall, becoming something of a local attraction and reigniting public interest in the Caldwell case. As the appointed date approached, Blackwater Harbor experienced a surge in visitors: journalists, paranormal enthusiasts, academic researchers, and the merely curious. The town council organized an official ceremony for the box's opening, to be held in the library at noon on January 12, 2019. The night before the scheduled opening, Blackwater Harbor experienced its most widespread power outage in recorded history. From midnight until 3:33 in the morning, the entire town was plunged into darkness. When power was restored, Security cameras at the library revealed that the metal box had opened itself during the outage, its lid rising slowly with no apparent human intervention.